My situationship walked all over me, so I made sure she could never walk back, and I want to tell you about the 4 months during which I executed a plan that ended her ability to ever return to the social spaces she had been operating in. The situationship had been with a woman named Cordelia. Cordelia and I had been in an undefined relationship for about a year. Cordelia had been the architect of the undefining. Cordelia had been treating me as a boyfriend in private and as a casual acquaintance in public. Cordelia had been doing this because Cordelia had been simultaneously seeing 2 other men. Cordelia had been 32. Cordelia had been a marketing executive. Cordelia had been popular in our city's social scene. I had figured out about the 2 other men about 10 months in. I had figured it out because one of the men had reached out to me. The man was named Hendrix. Hendrix had reached out to me through Instagram after seeing that I had been tagged in a photo with Cordelia. Hendrix and I had compared notes. The 2 of us had been not aware of each other. Hendrix had then mentioned that he had been suspecting a 3rd man. The 3rd man had been a guy named Sebastian. Sebastian had been a colleague of Cordelia's at her marketing firm. Sebastian had been seeing Cordelia for about 4 months. The 3 of us had decided to coordinate. 2 weeks before the gala, the 3 of us met in person for the first time. It was at a coffee shop on the east side of town. Hendrix walked in first. He was taller than I expected. He had a beard and he looked tired. Then Sebastian came in. Sebastian was younger than both of us, maybe 28, and he had this nervous energy. The 3 of us sat there in this coffee shop like some kind of weird support group. Hendrix was the first one to break the silence. He pulled out his phone and put it flat on the table. He opened up his messages with Cordelia and started scrolling. He turned the phone toward me and said, "Read this one." I looked at the screen. It was a message from Cordelia that said something about how she had never felt this way about anyone before. My chest got tight. I pulled out my own phone. I found the one I was looking for and put my phone next to his. The wording was almost identical, not similar, almost word for word, the same message. Sebastian pulled out his own phone. Same message, same words. The realization just sat on the table between us like something heavy. We were not individuals to her. We were interchangeable. She had a script and she ran it on whoever was in front of her. Then Hendrix said something that changed everything. He said, "I did some more digging after I reached out to you." He told us he had talked to a woman named Rita. Rita had been a former colleague of Cordelia's at a previous company. Rita had cut ties with Cordelia after finding out that Cordelia had been running the exact same pattern at her old job in another city. Hendrix said Rita told him, "She did this to at least 2 men I know of before she moved here. She leaves before anyone can connect the dots." This was not a one-time thing. This was a pattern. After hearing about Rita, the plan stopped feeling like payback. It started feeling like something that needed to happen. We spent the next hour debating how to do it. Sebastian wanted to confront Cordelia privately. Hendrix wanted to send an anonymous email to her company. I pushed for the gala. I said, "Cordelia's power comes from her social network. The only way to actually stop this is to make the truth visible to the people who give her access." Sebastian looked down at his coffee. He said, "If we do this wrong, we look like 3 bitter guys ganging up on a woman. So we set rules. No yelling, no insults, no dramatics, no name calling, just the truth," stated calmly. We shook on it and left the coffee shop separately. 3 days before the gala, I almost backed out. I was lying in bed around 11 at night. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. It was a text from Cordelia. It said, "I miss you. Can I come over tonight?" I stared at that message for a long time. I felt the pull. Then I screenshotted the message. I opened the group chat with Hendrix and Sebastian. I sent the screenshot without any comment. Hendrix responded within seconds. His message said, "She sent me the same thing 20 minutes ago." I put my phone down. The hesitation died right there. The night before the gala, I called my friend Nimue. Nimue was the only person outside of the 3 of us who knew about the plan. Nimue listened to me go over the details one more time. Then she got quiet. She said, "Are you sure this is about stopping her and not about hurting her?" I sat with that question for a while. I said, "I think it is both, and I think both are okay." Nimue was quiet for another second. Then she said, "Then make sure you can live with it after." The night of the gala, I drove to the venue. The place was huge. There were about 400 people inside, and then I saw her. Cordelia was across the room. She was wearing a red dress. She was laughing at something one of them had said. She looked radiant. She looked like she had never hurt anyone in her life. For a moment, just one small moment, I felt a crack in my resolve. I looked at her laughing and I thought, she looks happy. Maybe I am the problem. That thought lasted about 5 seconds. Then I remembered the screenshots. I remembered Rita, and I kept walking. The 3 of us had agreed on exactly how this would go. When cocktail hour started, I would approach Cordelia first. 60 seconds later, Hendrix would walk over. 60 seconds after that, Sebastian. The pacing mattered. Then something happened that we did not plan for. During the seated dinner portion, Cordelia spotted me from across the room. She excused herself from her table. She walked straight across the room and sat down in the empty chair right next to me. Then she put her hand on my knee under the table. She whispered, "I did not know you were coming. This is such a nice surprise." I said something casual. Then she leaned in closer. She said, "Can we talk later tonight? I have been thinking about us, about making it real, about making it official." For 12 months, I had been waiting for Cordelia to say those words, and she was saying them at the worst possible moment. I smiled at her. I told her I needed to use the restroom and that we would talk more during cocktail hour. I walked to the restroom at the back of the hall. I pulled out my phone. I opened the group chat. I typed, "She just told me she wants to make it official. She is trying to lock me down before I find out about you two. The plan stays." Hendrix responded within 30 seconds. His message said, "She told me the same thing last week." Then Sebastian responded right after. His message said, "She told me on Tuesday." Whatever tiny piece of me had still been holding on to the idea that maybe Cordelia really did care, that piece died in a bathroom stall at a charity gala. I walked to the sink. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked at myself in the mirror. The guy looking back at me did not look angry. He looked ready. The announcement came. Cocktail hour was starting. I scanned the room until I found Cordelia. She was standing with 2 women I did not recognize but who were clearly from her world. I found out later they were both from her marketing firm. I walked up and kept it casual. I said, "Hey." Cordelia smiled and turned to the 2 women. She said, "This is a friend of mine." A friend, not her boyfriend, not someone she was seeing, not the guy she had whispered to 20 minutes ago about making it official. I smiled. I shook both women's hands. I made small talk for about 30 seconds. The whole time I was watching the clock in my head. 60 seconds. Then I saw it. Cordelia's eyes moved past my shoulder. Her smile froze. Cordelia said, "Hendrix, what are you doing here?" Her voice was light, but there was a thin edge underneath it. Hendrix stepped up beside me. He was calm. He had his hands in his pockets. He said, "Same as everyone, supporting the cause." I could see Cordelia's brain working behind her eyes, doing the math. She decided it was a coincidence. She had to. She laughed. It was a nervous laugh. She turned to the two women and said, "This is another friend of mine." There it was again. Friend. Hendrix reached out and shook both their hands. He was smooth. Then he said, "Cordelia has so many friends. She is very generous with her time." The two women took it at face value. Cordelia did not. I saw her jaw tighten, and then Sebastian walked over. He came from the direction of the bar. He stopped right next to Hendrix. He said, "Hey, Cordelia." And that was when her face changed completely. The smile was gone. The color left her cheeks. Three men. All three men she had been secretly seeing, standing in front of her at the same time, in front of two women from her own company. She did not introduce Sebastian. She did not say anything at all. The silence was louder than any of the conversation had been. One of the two women looked at Sebastian, then looked at Cordelia. She said, "Another friend?" Sebastian looked at Cordelia. He took a breath. He said, "Actually, I think we are all a little more than friends. At least, that is what Cordelia told each of us, separately." The words were out now. There was no putting them back. Cordelia moved fast. She grabbed my arm. Her grip was tight. She pulled me a step to the side. She leaned in close and whispered, "What are you doing? Are you trying to embarrass me?" I said, "I am not doing anything. I am just standing here with two other men who thought they were your boyfriend." She dropped my arm. She said, "This is not what it looks like." I said, "Then what is it?" She said, "You are all being ridiculous. None of you were my boyfriend. We were casual." I let that word sit in the air. Casual. Then I said, "You told me last month that you loved me. You said it in my bed. Was that casual?" Her face tightened. She whispered, "Keep your voice down." But it was already too late. The two women from her firm had not walked away. They were not even pretending not to listen anymore. Other people nearby had turned too. Hendrix spoke up. He did not raise his voice. He just spoke clearly enough that everyone in our circle could hear him. He said, "Cordelia, you told me you loved me too. In September. Were we also casual?" Sebastian stepped forward a little. He said, "She told me the same thing in October." Same words. The circle of people listening got bigger. Cordelia's hands were shaking. She looked at the growing number of faces around us. She said, "You are all ganging up on me. This is harassment." I stayed calm. I said, "We are three men telling the truth in the same room for the first time. That is not harassment. That is a coincidence you did not plan for." Cordelia switched tactics. She stopped whispering. She raised her voice loud enough that people 10 feet away could hear her clearly. She said, "These men are stalking me. They coordinated this. Someone call security." She said it with conviction. And honestly, for about 3 seconds, it worked. The room tilted. The optics were exactly what I had been afraid of. Three men surrounding one woman at a charity event. I did not raise my voice. I did not argue. I just reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. I opened the screenshots. 3 messages from Cordelia, sent to 3 different men within the same week, with the same phrasing. I turned the phone toward the 2 women from Cordelia's firm. I said, "Look at these. All 3 messages. Same week, same words." The first woman took the phone from my hand. She scrolled. Her eyes got wide. She said, "These are word for word the same." I took my phone back. I said, "We are not here to make a scene. We are here because she has been doing this for years, and no one in her life knows." Cordelia turned to face the room. She was crying now. She said, "They are lying. They manipulated these messages." Hendrix spoke. His voice was calm. He said, "Cordelia, if we are lying, then call your phone company and prove the messages are fake. We will wait." Cordelia did not respond. She opened her mouth and nothing came out. One of the women from Cordelia's firm took a step back. The woman said quietly, "Cordelia, is this true?" Cordelia did not answer. She grabbed her purse from the table behind her. She turned toward the exit and started walking. People moved out of her way without being asked. She was halfway to the door when Sebastian spoke. He did not chase her. He did not move from where he was standing. He just said it clearly, without anger. He said, "Cordelia, I was your colleague. I sat next to you every day. I trusted you. You told me I was the only one. You told all of us we were the only one. I just want you to know that the 3 of us did not come here to destroy you. We came here because you made it impossible for us to trust anyone, and we thought the people in your life deserved to know who they were trusting." The room was silent. Cordelia stopped walking. She was maybe 15 feet from the door. She did not turn around. She stood completely still. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then she walked out the door, and she was gone. I stood there in the middle of that room. My hands were steady. I did not feel the rush I thought I would feel. I just felt still. The 2 women from Cordelia's firm walked over to me. One of them said, "How long was this going on?" I said, "At least a year with me, longer with others before us." The woman shook her head. She said, "She was supposed to lead our new campaign next month." 2 weeks after the gala, Hendrix texted me that Cordelia had been quietly removed from her company's marketing team. Within 2 months, she resigned. Within 6 months, she moved to a different city. The 3 of us met one final time at the same coffee shop where we had first planned everything. Hendrix said, "I do not feel good about it." Sebastian said, "I do not feel bad about it either." I did not say anything for a moment. Then I said, "I feel like I can start over now." We shook hands. We went our separate ways. I walked home alone. I deleted Cordelia's number. I sat on my couch in the quiet of my apartment. I called Nimue. She answered. She said, "How are you?" I said, "I can live with it." She said, "Good. That is all that matters."